Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the 360 podcast series. My name is Ed Masterson. I'm always honored to host these episodes. We always talk to really great people. I'll be introducing our guests for today in just a moment. I want to thank our sponsor for the podcast series, which is 360 Suites SCV and Mr. Fred Arnold, who owns 360 Suites SCV. Fred has 4 state-of-the-art properties here in the Santa Clarita Valley. So if you're looking for a business home away from home, you should definitely check in with Fred and his team. They've got some really great spots for you. The podcast studio that we're coming to you from today is located in what I call sort of the mothership of the 360 Suites properties here in Santa Clarita. It's the old Remax building off the 5 freeway, 25101, the old road. This building also is the home to the new home center here in Santa Clarita. Fred has all kinds of great interactive information up here on the second floor of the building. You can find out all you need to know about potential home purchases or just get some basic information if you're just starting out on the thought process of maybe wanting to buy a home. And as you all know, Fred is also a mortgage lender. So we got the whole thing wrapped up for you really here. His team is really nice. They can schedule an appointment for you to check out office space as well. My guest today is one of the tenants here at the 360 Suites building that we're talking about. I'm really honored to have her on the show. She is a fitness and lifestyle and sort of make you feel good expert on a variety of things. She's an author. She's a professor. She has her own podcast that we'll talk about as well. So welcome to the show, if you would please, Shelly Jefferis.
Thank you, Ed. It's great to be here.
There's our audience. Sorry. Try to get some mileage out of these dumb sound effects.
I love it.
Shelly, thanks for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It's really fun to be here.
Yeah, and I always am not wanting to under-introduce people. So I want to let you explain to us exactly. I tried to sort of do my version of all the things you do, but I know you do so much more. So why don't you describe to us a little bit about all the things you're involved in, what you like to be referred to in your profession, and just, some of the things, and we'll go through that and then talk about you and get to know you better and stuff like that.
Sounds good. Well, thank you, Ed. You're always so kind, and thank you for all that you do for our community, as Fred does as well. You both are amazing. And I actually have been involved in health and wellness for quite a few decades, and I hesitate to say that because it, kind of gives away my age. However, it has been a part of my life for more years than most of my life, quite frankly. And I am very involved in wellness, and that is really what I share and I preach, and I focus on that because I think we tend to, when we think about health and wellness, we tend to focus on just the physical part and the exercise part and the nutrition, which is huge, and that's my background. However, there's so much more to it. So for someone to have complete wellness, there are other aspects to it. So the mental part, the emotional, the spiritual, social, there's just other areas. So I actually, over a year and a half now ago, I started my own podcast called Words of Wellness. And I call it that because of that very reason, to be able to offer all kinds of guests and solo episodes as well that focus on all the different dimensions of wellness so that we can really focus on helping everyone improve their way of life, their quality of life, and give them tips, education, inspiration to help them just live, get into focusing on longevity, but with that longevity, feeling great. I feel like that's such the focus that I like to share as much as we can. Make healthy choices most of the time, not all of the time, of course, but most of the time, so that we can live that life of longevity and feel good in doing so.
So that is a huge amount of things that you are talking about, but to your point, all of those things are interconnected in all of our lives, right? And again, I agree with you 100%. Typically when all of us, myself included, think of fitness, we are thinking of, I'm going to call it maybe the 1980s mindset of that, which is get to a gym, work out, be involved in a lot of activity, whatever it is, running or whatever, physical activity, eat better, that kind of thing. But that is very one-dimensional within this umbrella that you just talked about of all these other components that enter into our lives. So how did you go from, when you first got interested in the fitness part of life in general for yourself, were you thinking of it in a more limited scope, and then over time you sort of expanded to include all these other components you're talking about? How did you do that?
That's exactly what happened. I actually, my love of fitness actually began in junior high as a teenager, and it stuck with me. It just stuck with me. I had a PE teacher that she had such an influence on me. That's when my love of running began, which I know some people are going, oh, you love to run? But yes, I do. And so as time it's evolved, I went on to complete my degree, my master's degree in kinesiology. I've taught college for over 30 years. And alongside teaching, I've always had that entrepreneur spirit, if you will. And it dates back to when my kids were babies. I had a franchise here called Stroller Strides locally where moms and babies would go outdoors. We would work out and just a great community. And then from there, I went on to being in charge of the physical education at my children's elementary school. So I've kind of catered to my kids' ages, if you will, and it's been such a blessing because then I've been able to be more present with them and be there for all of those phases. And then a few years later, I was introduced to a wellness company, and I've been partnered with them for almost 11 years. And through the last decade or so, or a little bit more, it's definitely evolved, I should say, into more of the complete wellness component. And I just, as I have gotten older, if you will, with age comes wisdom, and you realize all the different, very important components. But I believe too, it's how we have all evolved. Like you make the reference back to the 1980s, and absolutely. I mean, when I first started teaching fitness classes in gyms, I was wearing leg warmers and leotards and the headband around my forehead and all the thing, and that was the focus, running in place for 5 minutes. Like that's just insane. We don't do that anymore, and we know better. When you know better, you do better, and over time, thank goodness, that has evolved. And same thing with what we recommend and what we know to be the best choices for ourselves as far as our health goes. We have more information now, more science, and more knowledge to back up what we know and the right way to do things so that we can live our best lives.
Yeah. So, Shelly, back in the 80s, late 70s, I started running also, a mile a day. And then I worked up to like 6.5, 7 miles every day. And yes, it was strictly then the mindset that I had, which was kind of prevalent among all my contemporaries that were, active and stuff, was kind of you just have to kind of grit it out and have like a tough mentality and just, go knock out 6.5 miles every day because that would keep you in shape. There was knowledge a little bit about nutrition, but when you're in college, you're not being super careful about what you're eating, most people. So I love this all this multi-layered elements that you bring into it now, because I'm going to guess also, maybe you are, but even if you're not officially a therapist, you have therapist tendencies because you're able to counsel people and advise them and kind of protect them a little bit from getting too, I would imagine, just because I know you and you're a very kind and giving and soothing person to talk to. So I'm assuming you're able to help guide people into areas where you can not only just encourage them in the right directions, but also sort of counsel them psychologically and emotionally to not get frustrated, as human nature wants us to do sometimes, with whatever it is we're pursuing, whether we're trying to lose weight, we're trying to get in better shape, whatever that means. How do you do that? Do you have some of that therapy or that therapist gene in you? And maybe you are a therapist. If you are, I'm sorry, I don't know that.
No, I'm not, but I have been told pretty much exactly what you were saying, and I feel like I have a good take on certain people, and I want to listen, and I want to help, and I want to be that person to offer inspiration if I can, offer guidance, offer direction in what they're doing, and then also encourage people to give themselves grace along the way, because I know this day and age, we get caught up in our day-to-day lives, we get caught up in the busyness of life, and we all do this, we put pressure on ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And I am the first one, and I need to talk to myself as well to give ourselves grace. It's never a perfect scenario. It's not all or nothing. I've never, ever been that person. I've never promoted that at all. In fact, I was on a podcast episode yesterday, and we were talking about how that has come to be, or where did that come from? I'm not quite sure, that all or nothing mentality. But I always like to help people see the progress they have made and to remind them that this is a journey. It's an ongoing journey, even for someone like myself, who this has been my profession for like 4 decades, 40 years. It's an ongoing journey, and I want to encourage people to enjoy the journey the best that they can. So make good, healthy choices, but also enjoy your life along the way. I am a huge proponent of that.
Right.
It's we have to enjoy ourselves. Otherwise, what's the point?
No, you're right. And I think also, I told my wife, this is a theory I have. All of the kids that our kids went to school with, right? So if you took all the kids they went to school with, my wife and I are 10 years older than almost all those other parents because we just waited forever to have kids, right? But I think my theory on it is, depending what profession you work in, and depending maybe if you're an older parent but have younger kids, having younger kids can sometimes keep you younger mentally, because you're having to be involved with the things that those kids are involved in. Or if you work in certain businesses, entertainment, maybe you're naturally absorbing more contemporary things, pop cultural things, maybe that if you don't work in that industry, it's not that you don't also have good pop cultural awareness, but it's not maybe in your life every single day. People that are fitness, I'm calling you a fitness expert, even though I know that feels a little limiting. It's more than that. I think you have a very young mindset. And also when you talk about being the person in charge of the physical stuff at your kids' school for a while, also your career as a professor, just immersing yourself in this field for so long. Am I correct? Does it make you feel as if you are mentally much younger than whatever your chronological age is? Do you feel like that keeps you entrenched in a youthful mindset, yet always learning new things to add into all the experience and knowledge you've already accumulated over the past, several decades of doing it?
I would have to say yes. And it's funny because, I mean, and you I'm sure experience this, where you see all your kids and your kids' friends and, other young people getting older, and you're thinking, well, I'm not getting older. What's happening here, right? I mean, and that's so true. And I just, I saw someone the other day, and I hadn't seen this person in a long time, and I go, oh, because it's been a long time, they look a little bit older. And I went, oh gosh, that probably means I do too. And so I do agree with what you're saying. I think it does definitely help my mental state and just staying positive. And I'm exactly like you're saying. I will be a lifelong learner. I want to help people with their wellness, and I will always say, if you have a question and you want to reach out to me, I'm happy to answer it for you. And if I don't have the information, I will seek it out for you. I don't claim to know everything ever, but I will find the answers. And I'm always reading and learning and wanting to grow and be a part of, go to conferences, be a part of masterminds, go to our community events here and interact with people. All of that
Right.
combined is so huge to what you're saying, keeping us young, keeping us vibrant, energetic. It all counts, and it all is very important.
Yeah, I think part of the young thing is, for me at least, is continuing to challenge my own beliefs. So in other words, you know how it is. I think there's some things in life I don't have to challenge, like being respectful and kind and appreciative, things like that. Those are set in stone, right? But there's other things as you go along, depending where you are in life, what's happening in the world around you, and you develop certain beliefs, I'm calling them. And I think it's really healthy to constantly challenge that, because otherwise, if you lock in and say, well, I think this way about this, and now that I've decided that, I'm never going to look at any new information to maybe change my mind about that. And I think that's part of staying youthful mentally, is being willing to not stop learning, always be interested, be curious about things. And I think that gives you, again, even if, your body ages and you look your age type of thing, I think it gives you a vitality mentally and emotionally to be able to be more in the game of whatever it is you're doing, and just be able to connect with people better than not. I think that's just kind of my theory. I don't know if that's right.
I agree. It sounds right to me. Sounds good to me, Ed.
Do you have anything for skin? I notice on my skin, for a lifetime of not having used sunscreen just because of being lazy, not deliberately not using sunscreen, but as I'm looking at the thing there, I see like this red mark on my face. I've got such damaged skin. Anyway, I feel self-conscious in the presence of somebody who's so healthy.
Oh my goodness, you're so funny. Your skin looks great. But yes, we can talk later. I do absolutely have a couple things that could potentially help. But you look great. Your skin looks great to me.
You're too kind, too kind. The HD camera doesn't do me any favors. So Shelly, of all the people all the different age groups you've worked with throughout your career and continue to do that, is there a favorite? Like, in other words, do you like working with younger kids, like in grammar school or high school level or college? I know you kind of have experience, or adults that are out of college. Do you have a favorite age range you like to interact with when it comes to helping sort of make that age group aware of things they may not be aware of, and then also seeing them progress and being able to be part of their journeys?
That's a great question that I have never been asked, and I've never really thought of having a favorite age group. And it's, as you're asking that, I think that I'm so used to dealing with the young adult population and adults that has been my journey for so many years, and it's been very rewarding for sure. And there's always progress that can be made, and at any age, of course. And so I guess I'd have to say that young adult population. I stayed away from high school purposefully. I didn't know if I would want to deal with the high school, teenagers, that crowd. But they're all good kids. I just never had the opportunity to teach at that age level. On the flip side, working with the elementary school kids was a huge blessing also, because my whole approach was to instill a positive attitude within these kids towards fitness, physical education, nutrition, being active. Many of them, either one, maybe they didn't have a high skill level, or two, they're not surrounded or being influenced by a family or parents that have an active lifestyle. And so I felt like it was a huge responsibility to instill that, because some of these kids weren't getting it anyplace else.
Right.
And I know how things used to be at that age level, and many, many years ago, it wasn't the most inviting environment. I mean, I have memories as a kid, getting laughed at, or I remember in elementary school when you would choose teams and certain kids would be the last ones to be chosen. Just that, you have that experience,
Sure.
that sticks with you forever. And so I really feel like that was such a great moment in time. I had about 8 years there to make that impact. And I believe I did. I hope I did. But that was always my approach, to include all of the kids, help them all feel comfortable, help them to have fun, most importantly, because if they can, at that age, have that attitude, then they'll carry that with them later on in life.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think having somebody in a school position, for example, everything you just said, because there's no guarantee what kind of support or encouragement kids are getting in the fitness realm from their home life, because we just don't know. And every home life is different, and there's pressures and demands on parents all the time. So to have somebody at the school who took on that responsibility and could be that mentor and that person to inspire kids, and also to your point about, maybe moderating kid behavior so that it's not excluding certain kids or making them feel bad. Like, that's such a great person to have on a school staff involved with this, because there are a lot of insecurities kids have at that age, just in general. Then when you're working in fitness related things, and some kids may not be, everything you said, may not be as adept with, coordination or whatever it is they're doing, getting picked last for a team and kind of that stigma that comes with that, all that. What a great thing to have at a school. And it should almost be, now that we're talking about it, somebody who's like sort of the mentoring officer, I guess, to keep an eye on stuff like that, because there is a lot of demands on the schools to get through all the things they have to get through every day. It would be great to have somebody in those departments where insecurities maybe become even more exposed than in the classroom, which that's more of an academic thing, right? But when it comes to physical stuff, that I think would be such a great thing to, as I said, have somebody or somebody's a department on campus that's involved in not letting people feel excluded or ridiculed or whatever it is, and teach the people that are ridiculing them, hey, look, that's bad behavior. Don't do that. I know you've got a decent spirit about yourself. Don't make somebody else feel bad to make yourself feel better. All that kind of stuff, right?
Right.
Which plays back into our own self-esteem, right? We all have some image in our head, like me with the bad skin or whatever, I need to lose 20 more pounds and stuff like that. Is like, we all have an idea in our head where this is where I want to be. this is, when I was here, I felt really good about myself, whenever that was, right? And so we're always kind of, I think, striving to get to where that place in our head is. And it's great to have people that are not knocking you down during that period, but instead kind of lifting you up, which is exactly what you do. Encouraging people, mentoring, saying, hey, good job, keep up the great work, whatever it is, right? We kind of need that kind of coaching or inspiration from people in life. And I love the fact that you're that person that's doing that, but we need like 1,000 Shellys in the world to be at all the different schools.
I don't know about that, but but thank you for that. And I wish there were more programs at the elementary school level. You know, that's always the first to go, and which unfortunately that's just the way that it has been.
Yeah.
And you know, it's definitely evolved again. I don't know if it's evolved in a great way because of budget cuts and all of the things. They don't always bring someone in who has the professional background or education in that area. So it's tough to see that happen, but it's hopefully it'll turn around again and they can have some good programs going.
What do you think about in today's world? And again, based on what I just said about people having an image of what they want to be and what we want the world to see us as, you know, maybe physically as well as just who we are as human beings. Where do you think social media falls now that we've had, I think social media really debuted somewhere around 2003, 4, somewhere around there. Facebook, I think that's kind of the birthplace of Facebook, 2003 or somewhere around there. Now that we've had it in our lives for 20 years and it's become so prevalent and so many other social media platforms that exist in the world, where do you think that falls into people's journeys, their health and fitness and, you know, self-esteem and wellness awareness? I'm going to say, is it mostly good, mostly bad, somewhere in the middle? Depends who's using it, how they're using it. What's your thoughts on social media and where it lands in this whole thing we're talking about?
Well, I have various thoughts on it. Like you're saying, there's definitely the pros and there's definitely the cons. And I think that the cons and the negative side of it definitely impacts our younger population more than anyone. But the ironic thing is they're the ones who are most involved with social media. Like they've grown up with it, which is really, sometimes I go, gosh, you know, I sometimes think that maybe we gave our kids cell phones at too young of ages. And, you know, you go back and you could think all those things at this point, but it is a part of our lives. And it's really interesting because there's a lot of people talking about the fact that what people share on social media is just the highlight reel, so to speak, just the positive things and making their lives and everything look wonderful. And hey, that's okay. But I think people want authenticity. And, you know, what you see with me is what you get. Like, I like to think I'm the same right here now as I am on social media or as I am in person. I'm never going to be fake about anything. Will I share all of the rough moments? Not always, but I'm also not going to hide it. If someone wants to ask me about something, I'm happy to share. I mean, I got on just a couple weeks after my dad died and shared and got emotional online. Like I'm not going to hide that, you know?
Sure.
And so that's my personal approach. And I approach it from a standpoint of, for the most part, my intention is to be positive and be a bright light for others. It might not always be that, but that's my goal and my intention. So for me personally, I look at it as a positive standpoint for that reason. However, there's definitely a lot of noise, as you know, and you know, I get caught up in it too. So being able to differentiate, you know, what you want to focus your time and energy on is really important. And I'm the first to admit, sometimes I get sucked into that, and I make a point to go, okay, take a deep breath. You know, this is something that we don't have control over. You know, I often struggle with, I don't want to get involved in some of the negativity. On the flip side, I also want to stand up for me and what I value and believe in. So there's that kind of a struggle that I personally sometimes go through. But I would really hope that it's positive for most. But again, unfortunately, you see and you hear about these stories, especially with the young kids who get influenced and get bullied online. And I don't know what the answer is to that, but that's heartbreaking. So there's definitely extremes for sure.
I have the answer to get rid of that.
Get rid of it altogether?
No, I do joke around about that. It was maybe 5 years ago, I think, and I don't know what she was going through at the time, but Lady Gaga made a statement. I think she said, social media is the toilet of the internet. And I don't know what was happening with her at the time, but I kind of laugh because I think, here's what I say, Shelly, to my daughter mostly. My son uses social media, not as much. My daughter's pretty active on it, right? She's 24 now. And I tell her, I say, look, Lizzie, if social media platforms around the world went away tomorrow, the world was fine without them before they came around. So I'm not that guy shouting, get rid of social media. I think how it could be made better a little bit would be to your point about the bullying stuff, make it only so you can share about stuff, but nobody can comment on your shares. Like, in other words, that way, you've seen these posts too, whether it's sporting events or it doesn't matter what it is. There are these back and forth, like sort of sometimes horrific comments about whatever the original post was or the person that posted it. I think that would be the way. If you can neutralize the comments from other people so you don't have to listen to their opinion about whatever it was you posted. So if you want to post a highlight reel of yourself, great. But I know that part of the fascination is seeing who then comes in to like it, talk about it, say how great you are, we love you, blah, blah, whatever it is. So I know that would cut a lot of the legs out of social media to get rid of the comments by other people on the original post. But I think then people could indulge in all the highlight reels they want and not have to suffer any negative backlash from people giving them a hard time about it. But again, it is a very, I guess if you use it the right way with a good heart and you're able to tune out people that are haters just because they are, then it's probably a beneficial thing in your life. If you get brought down by negative comments that other people make about something you've posted, then it could probably be bad and it could hurt your self-esteem. And to your point about the bullying, that's pretty horrible. It would be great to find some, and I know the platforms all say, oh, we look for, hate speech and stuff like that, but I think it's a pretty minimal look-see because they probably don't have the ability to track it as much. There's millions of people using it every second, right? So
Right. Well, and I think, I do use it a lot, and I started using it years ago, business purposes, but also personally when I started on Facebook. To me, it was a way to connect with, I'm connecting with some high school friends and connecting with family that I don't live close by. It still is that. So I think if we can focus on that, it's just, as you know, I mean, unfortunately, it's turned into just sometimes a very noisy, all of them have become quite noisy, and it's just differentiating between, okay, what is authentic, what's real, and what is not. And nowadays, when you have AI and you have bots, I mean, who knows? I mean, I start to question so many different things that you read and you see. And I think that's the important thing, is just to think for yourself and have that discernment as to, okay, how does this sound? Does this seem like this is something that's accurate and real? And, I will never speak on or share on or write about something that I don't know about. And the only time I do is if I know about it or I've experienced it.
Right.
Otherwise, I'm not going to pretend that I know.
yeah, there does seem to be, not always, but a lot of times, and I'm looking at sporting things too. We follow our favorite football team and fans get on there and there's just this desire to be snarkier than the last person and just, be the most sarcastic and cheap shot expert. And so, I mean, to me, that is just, that's such negative energy in my opinion. And like, and there are times when I've been guilty of it in my own living room, sitting there with friends about something I see on TV. I think that's a little different. Maybe it's not. Maybe I'm giving myself more credit. But I just was wondering what your thoughts were on that, because I think the world of fitness is, for better or worse, kind of tied into connective tissue with our self-esteem, because we want to do things that allow us to be our best selves, whatever that means to each of us. And we have people like yourself that are knowledgeable in all these components that help us move in that right direction. And then you personally are somebody who's obviously very encouraging and inspiring to people. So I was wondering where, with all that good effort going in the right direction, how much, if any, does social media come in and chip away at some of the good? And I guess if you learn to use it the right way and not let it consume you in a bad way, it can probably be a very powerful tool to help you, right?
Right. And, to your point, and this could be a whole other episode for sure. But when we talk about sports, and, I don't know if you saw this, you probably did last year, but my son was a senior and his team went to the CIF playoff. And there was a whole debacle about the other team hitting a home run and winning when it wasn't actually a home run. And people online got very nasty and got very nasty with our high school players. And so when you see that happen, I mean, obviously the mama bear in me and all the others starts to, I had to like really refrain from saying things and typing things because they were going after our boys
Right.
who did nothing wrong. I mean, these were parents, Ed, that started messaging some of the players in a negative, nasty way. So, it's not just the young people. Some of the adults need a little bit of training, education. I don't know what it is because that just blew me away. I mean, it's one thing when it's the team and the boys after each other and complaining or griping with one another or whatever they're going to do. But when the parents start getting involved and getting nasty online and private messaging our players, that's a whole other level. And luckily it came back in our favor and was, as it was supposed to. But I was blown away. And it didn't just happen and last for 24, 48 hours. It went on for like 2 weeks.
That is, again, this will sound, not the right way. I would expect that more from high school kids, and I shouldn't say that because I know a lot of high school kids that would never engage in that kind of activity.
Right.
But to get it from adults who are also parents, who should know better because they have children of their own, to engage in that kind of sniping and that kind of, character assassination or whatever was being said, right, is really, that really just makes you shake your head and say, what in the world has happened to people, and common sense and some decency and integrity. And we all get very wrapped up in things in our lives, sports especially, because the people that are involved in it put a lot of sacrifice and a lot of effort into it, as do the parents, the families, coaches, the school, whatever. So I understand the level of emotion connected to it. But at some point, like, where are those people? Where's their common sense to draw the line and say, no, that's going too far. I'm not going to do that.
Right,
That's a sad commentary that people go past that line, apparently 100 miles an hour, and don't, have any common sense to not do that. It's terrible.
It was really terrible. I mean, it's it's water under the bridge now, I guess, so to speak. But it's like when you're talking about your daughter. Thankfully, I shouldn't say thankfully, but my kids are very rarely on social media. They never have really been that involved in it. Once in a blue moon, they'll share something, and so it just, everybody has their own personal choice on it, and I sometimes think it's maybe better for them at their stage of life, and everybody to each his own, I guess. But if you can, again, approach it in more of a positive light and share positivity, and I've learned this too from being in business, is that the whole point is to offer value, share education, share your knowledge and your experiences, and then also maybe be funny sometimes. Be inspirational, the things that are going to bring people
Right.
up. We need that now in this day and age more than ever.
Yeah.
So why knock people down? What do you gain from that? And I stop myself sometimes if I want to like say something or comment. I go, okay, well, I'm not going to change this person's thought or view. What is going to be gained by me saying X, Y, Z? And I have to stop and think and go, probably nothing, so let's move on. And sometimes I'll actually, I don't know if you ever do this, but this is what I sometimes do. I'll actually, in the moment, type something out, but I don't send it. It'll kind of like trigger me a little, and I might say blah, 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 and then I've got it out of me. I'm not sending it, but it's out of my system and moving on. So I do have to say I sometimes will do that.
Well, I think it's human nature to be angered or annoyed by things.
Certain things.
100%.
Yeah, certain things.
But I think then there is the good judgment to, especially in the thing you were talking about with the players. I mean, actually, it's funny. During this last, I think, college basketball season, I started seeing these ads. Now it's very easy to bet on games at home on your phone. You can place bets and wager on games and things like that. They started running a series of ads saying, very much in response to what we're talking about, do not, like, basically the ad was, hey, have fun with sports, but if you are basically trying to target and criticize and cheap shot a player for an outcome of a bet you lost, like don't do that's basically they're basically saying have fun with the betting, keep it in the right perspective. If you lose, you lost. It's a bet. Oh well. Don't take that out on players and coaches who are doing their best obviously to win those games. And if they don't win them, don't take out your frustration because you lost that bet on them by whatever. I'm sure they were flooding college team websites and social media platforms with all kinds of hate mail and stuff like that, some people, which prompted the NCAA to put out that commercial, which I thought was good. Now, does it fall on deaf ears? Probably. People that are prone to doing that anyway aren't going to pay attention to the commercial.
Right.
But I thought it was a good reminder at least. It's like, okay, that's good. For people that don't have those guardrails on themselves, it's a good reminder not to do that. So
Well, and I think, and you know this, Ed, because of the work that you are doing, which is wonderful, and thank you for what you do, and being a life coach and transforming people's lives. Most of the time, you hear that when someone says something negative or acts in a negative way, it's really something within them that they are not happy about or they're insecure about. And again, I'm not trying to sound like a therapist because that's not what I am, but you hear that often. It's like, so I think what it does, the point in sharing that is it helps people understand that it's not, even though it can hurt sometimes, it's not about us most of the time. Sometimes, yes, we have to take that responsibility, but so much of the time when people act out like that, it's something else going on.
yeah. I'm sorry I took us down a dark road about social media and how it's.
No, I know this is the interesting thing, and I want to share this for a moment. One thing that I've been doing the last year and a half is I've been growing a community for moms, a wellness community to empower them to put their health and their wellness and their self-care as a priority. It was on my heart to do, and I'm gradually building this community. We've had 2 in-person wellness events so far. I have a third one scheduled for October. And I'm also branching out and offering one-on-one mentorship and group mentorship. And this, when it comes to motherhood, we're a tribe. It takes a village. And one of the topics that has been shared at my events, I've had various speakers come in. But one of the topics is about what we are talking about right now is safety on the internet and with social media. And she's gearing it towards our kids and us as moms, but it's information that's important for everyone.
Right.
So
No,
it's valuable, and it's important to discuss and share for sure.
No, Shelly, and I really appreciate you coming in today. And I know like we could talk for hours and hours. Well, we'll just have you come back and we can pick it up there. But what is the one thing you want to say? Because like you are revered in your field and you have all these accolades and things like that. What would be sort of like the sort of closing inspirational Shelly Jefferis kind of message you want to give to the people watching the episode? I know that sounds kind of corny, but it's really not. And I'm not laughing because I think it's corny. I'm laughing because I really appreciate what you do and people that are in your space out in the world that are doing the same thing, because we do need it. And there are so many demands on our attention these days for things that are not necessarily uplifting, that it's great to have someone like yourself who's doing the uplifting part of it, not only with your knowledge about fitness, kind of like we talked about nutrition and exercise and all those basic fitness things, but all the other components of fitness too that you talked about, like the mental health elements of it and things like that. So what would be a good sort of make everybody feel good message to send us out of the episode with?
Well, a couple of things come to mind, and this is more probably focused on my moms, because I do share the fact that, and this is for everyone, that you need to put your self-care as a priority, because you need to be able to fill up your cup first before you can fill up the cup of others. And it's very cliche, but it's so true. And especially for those of us who have kids, whether they're at home or not,
Right.
we still need to be there for them, right? And so I think that's very important. And then something that I also like to stress, I talk a lot about day-to-day wellness. I talk a lot about and share on toxins and living a healthy, clean lifestyle and all of these different areas. And I like to share because I want to bring about awareness. But in doing so, I always stress, again, it's not about perfection. It's a journey. It's a process. But what I always like to say is little things that we do each day add up. So if we're feeling like, oh my gosh, I don't have the time to go out for a 30-minute run or a 40-minute walk, and then we just go forget about it because I don't have time. I've always said anything's better than nothing, and every little bit adds up. And so I would just want to stress with everyone, take the time for yourself. It could be literally go outside and get some fresh air for 5-10 minutes. I mean, it doesn't have to be major. And I think that's where we've kind of maybe lost the message along the way, feeling like, well, shoot, I don't have time, so I'm not going to do it at all. Take a little time, just quiet time, whatever that is for you that helps to kind of refresh your mind and kind of re-energize yourself, I think is so important. And I make a practice, not every single day, but I am intentional about going outside. I get my coffee first, though, Ed. That's like numero uno. But I'll walk outside with my coffee mug, get a little fresh air. If the sun's out, step outside for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And research supports that. Going out, getting a little bit of that first sunlight in the morning. And again, it's not perfect. I don't get it in every single day, but I am intentional, especially with how beautiful the weather is right now, is doing that. And I think whatever that looks like for anyone, I just want to encourage to take small moments, baby steps. If you are on a mission or you are working towards a certain goal with your overall health, your wellness, keep going, take the baby steps. We might take a couple of steps forward and maybe one step back, and that is okay. I want to encourage people, don't give up. Keep on going, because every step is adding up over time.
That I can't think of better advice than that. And I agree with you 100%. Shelly, and it goes back to your thing from earlier. You mentioned, sometimes we get in the mindset of all or nothing. And somewhere in between all and nothing is something, right? And to your point, everything you just said is phenomenal. And again, it's a great example of how you encourage people and inspire people with just kind of common sense, very incremental movement in the right direction, but over time, like a puzzle, it finally all adds up. It's to your benefit. So thank you very much for that. We appreciate that. It's a great end of session piece of advice. It was great. I love that.
Thank you, Ed.
And thanks for coming on and taking the time to be here and, sharing all your knowledge with us. And hopefully you'll come back again and we can pick some other thing to go down the rabbit hole on, like social media.
Well, like you said, we could talk about all kinds of topics, and I'm happy to come back and share. And maybe when it gets closer to my next Moms Who Flourish event, which is October, maybe we can jump in and share about that upcoming event. Yeah.
That'd be great. Well, thanks for all the work you do with moms. I mean, you know what? Moms are probably the most underappreciated members of our society for how much they get taken for granted, how much they do. They're always doing something for the family, and they're almost always doing it at the expense of their own, probably, well-being. So moms deserve all the credit we can give them. So that'd be great.
Well, dads too. And with that, happy Father's Day to you.
Thank you.
Around the corner here in a couple days.
Thank you very much, Shelly. I appreciate that. So thank you again for coming on.
Thank you.
And again, thanks all of you for watching. If you like this episode, hit the like button, if you would, please, for us. We appreciate that very much. And a big thank you again to Fred Arnold, the owner of 360 Suites SCV, for having us here in the podcast studio and being the sponsor for this event. So we will see all of you the next time. We're going to take you out with our cool theme music. Here we go.